The security footage had no sound. That's what I keep thinking about. If there had been sound, maybe I would have heard something human in it. Laughter, hesitation, guilt. But there was nothing. Just a silent black and white screen. 11:52 p.m. The office lights were off. The main entrance had been locked since 9. And then I saw them. Not leaving through the front doors like employees do. Not walking side by side like coworkers. No. They exited through the side door, the one that only executives use, the one that bypasses reception, the one with no street visibility. He walked out first. She followed. He stopped, looked around. Then he reached for her. Not aggressively, not desperately. Familiar. That's the word that broke something inside me. Familiar. The way he pulled her close wasn't impulsive. It wasn't new. It was practiced. And the worst part? He had texted me 15 minutes earlier, still at the office. Big presentation tomorrow. Don't wait up. I didn't confront him that night. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just watched the footage again. And again. And again. Because that wasn't the first lie. It was just the first one I could see. My name is Claire. I'm 36 years old. I was married for 11 years, and for most of that time, I believed I was married to a good man, an ambitious man, a driven man, the kind of man women are told to be proud of. Daniel built his company from scratch, or at least that's the story he liked to tell. He started small, consulting contracts, long nights at the dining room table, spreadsheets open until 2 a.m. I used to bring him coffee. I used to sit across from him just to feel close. Back then, the late nights felt romantic. We were building something together, or so I thought. When the company started growing, everything changed. He hired staff, moved into a proper office space downtown, started wearing sharper suits, started speaking in terms like expansion, investors, scaling, and then one day he mentioned her. "We hired a new executive assistant," he said casually while loosening his tie. "Her name's Olivia. She's organized. Finally, someone competent." I remember smiling. "Good. You need help." And I meant it. I was proud of him. Olivia was young, mid-20s, business degree, efficient, polished. I met her once at a holiday event. She shook my hand with both of hers, held eye contact just a second too long. "I've heard so much about you," she said. At the time, I thought it was flattering. Now I wonder what she'd heard. The late nights started slowly. At first, it made sense. New contracts, bigger clients, investors flying in from out of state. He'd text, "Running late. Don't wait up." Dinner with clients. Sometimes he'd come home exhausted, drop his briefcase by the door, and barely kiss me. Other times he wouldn't come home at all. Stayed at the office. Too much to finish. I told myself this was what success looked like. I told myself ambitious men didn't clock out at 5, but something small started to shift. He stopped telling me details. Before, he'd complain about clients, laugh about awkward meetings, rant about minor office drama. Now, vague, just work stuff. If I asked follow-up questions, he'd sigh. "You wouldn't get it, Claire. It's complicated." I hate how quickly I accepted that. I started adjusting my life around his schedule. Dinner alone, bed alone, weekends interrupted by emergencies. And then one night, I made a mistake. I dropped by the office. It wasn't suspicious at first. I was downtown. I thought I'd surprise him with takeout. When I walked in, the receptionist looked confused. "Oh, Mr. Hayes left hours ago." My stomach dipped. "Left?" "Yes, around 9. It was 11:15. I called him. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, still at the office. Why?" My throat went dry. "I just thought I'd bring you dinner." Pause. A fraction too long. "Oh." I stepped out to grab something. "I'll be back soon." I stood in the lobby staring at the empty hallway. And that was the first time I felt it. Not suspicion. Displacement. Like I wasn't part of his life anymore. Like I had fallen slightly out of frame. I didn't confront him that night. I told myself I was being dramatic. The next week, Olivia started emailing me about scheduling, about charity events, about things that used to go through Daniel directly. She'd CC him. He rarely responded, but she always did. Efficient, prompt, present. I noticed something else. She knew when he was tired before I did. She knew when he was stressed before he told me. She once said at an event, "He's been pushing himself too hard lately." And I remember thinking, how do you know that? When did you start knowing my husband's emotional patterns better than me? Still, I stayed quiet. Because questioning a hard-working husband makes you sound insecure. Because doubting a successful man makes you sound ungrateful. Because every time I tried to bring it up, he'd say, "It's just work, Claire. You're overthinking." But here's the thing. It's never just work when someone else starts occupying the emotional space that used to belong to you. And I didn't realize how far that space had shifted. Not until the cameras. And when I finally saw what was happening at 11:52 p.m., I understood something I wish I had understood sooner. He wasn't working late. He was leaving early. And I just hadn't noticed where he was going. The thing about betrayal is this. It rarely arrives as a revelation. It arrives as a pattern. And patterns are easy to ignore when you love someone. After that night in the lobby, I didn't confront Daniel. I adjusted. That's what I was good at. Adjusting. He started coming home later more consistently. Not occasionally. Not during big launches. Consistently. Midnight became normal. Then 1 a.m. Sometimes 2. When I asked about it, his responses were sharp but controlled. "You think I want to be there that late? You think I enjoy working myself to death?" It was subtle. He never yelled. He made me feel selfish instead. Like I was demanding attention from a man who was building a future for us. For us. That phrase started sounding hollow. One night, I stayed awake on purpose. Lights off, house silent, phone in my hand. At 12:18 a.m., his location icon showed office. At 12:41 a.m., it moved. Not toward home. Toward the other side of downtown. It stopped. 15 minutes. Then moved again. Back to the office. Then finally home. I stared at the screen and did nothing. Because the mind does something fascinating when faced with a truth it's not ready to process. It invents alternative explanations. Maybe he forgot something. Maybe he met a client. Maybe he was avoiding traffic. Maybe. The next morning, Olivia called while he was in the shower. Her name flashed across the kitchen counter. I let it ring. She called again. I answered. Silence. Then a slight intake of breath. "Oh, I thought Daniel would answer." Her voice was calm, not embarrassed, not flustered, just steady. "He's in the shower." "Oh, okay. Could you tell him I finalized the presentation deck and I booked the hotel for next week?" "Hotel? For the conference?" I asked. "Yes, 2 rooms. Same as usual." Same as usual. I repeated that phrase in my head for hours. When Daniel came downstairs, I told him she called. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look nervous. He just said, "Yeah, she handles logistics." Handles logistics. That's what she was doing at 12:18 a.m.? Logistics? The conference was 3 days long. Different city. Same hotel chain they'd used before. He packed carefully. 2 suits, 3 ties. A new cologne I hadn't seen before. "You bought something new?" I asked. He shrugged. Needed it. No eye contact. Just efficient movements. The morning he left, I watched him load the car. And I felt something I hadn't felt before. Not jealousy. Not fear. Absence. Like I was already grieving something that hadn't officially ended. During the conference, his texts were mechanical. Long day. Networking dinner. Exhausted. He stopped calling before bed. On the second night, I checked the hotel's public event page. It listed keynote speakers, panel sessions, sponsors, but no schedule past 8 p.m. At 11:57 p.m., I called. He declined it. He texted a minute later. "In a meeting. Can't talk. Midnight meeting." At a conference that ended at 8. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. And then I did something I hadn't done before. I searched her. Not just LinkedIn. Not just professional profiles, personal, photos, tagged locations, old college friends. And there it was. A photo from 2 years ago. Same hotel chain, same city. She was smiling in front of the lobby mirror. Caption: business trips hit different when you're with the right company. 2 years ago. Before the company even scaled to that level. Before he needed to travel so often. Before I thought the late nights were normal. I zoomed in on the reflection behind her. A man's shoulder, navy suit, silver tie clip. Daniel owned a silver tie clip. But silver tie clips are common, right? I closed the app. I told myself I was spiraling. That night I couldn't sleep. And here's what scared me most. It wasn't the possibility of an affair. It was the possibility that I had been slowly erased from my own marriage without noticing. When he came home, he kissed my forehead. Not my mouth, my forehead, like I was something fragile. Or something finished. He unpacked in silence, hung his suits carefully, set his phone face down on the dresser. I watched him, and I realized something had shifted. He moved in the house like a guest, like someone staying temporarily, like someone already halfway gone. 3 days later, an employee I barely knew sent me a message. Anonymous account. No profile picture, just text. If you're going to check the cameras, check the side exit. I read it 10 times. Side exit. My chest tightened. I knew about the main entrance cameras. Investors had insisted on upgraded security last year. But the side exit? That was executive access only. Limited badge entry. Limited visibility. I stared at the message. And for the first time, I didn't try to rationalize. I didn't invent an explanation. I didn't defend him in my own mind. I just felt cold. Because anonymous warnings don't appear in healthy marriages. And whoever sent it knew something. The next morning, I called the building manager. I told him I thought I left something in Daniel's office weeks ago. I asked if I could check the footage for the night I had stopped by. He hesitated, then agreed. Just don't mention it to Mr. Hayes. He's particular about privacy. Privacy. The word echoed in my head. Privacy is different from secrecy. One protects dignity, the other protects deception. I drove downtown alone, and the entire time, one thought kept looping. If it's nothing, I'll apologize to him. If it's something, I don't know who I am anymore. And that was the moment everything shifted, because for the first time, I wasn't trying to protect the marriage. I was trying to protect myself. And I didn't know yet that what I was about to see at 11:52 p.m. was only part of the truth. The footage showed them leaving, but it didn't show what happened before that, and it definitely didn't show how long it had been happening. That part, I would uncover later, and it would be worse than the camera ever captured. The security room smelled like dust and old wiring. I remember that detail clearly, not because it mattered, but because when your world tilts, your brain clings to irrelevant things just to stay upright. The building manager didn't ask too many questions. I told him I thought I'd left something in Daniel's office weeks ago. A bracelet. Sentimental value. That part wasn't a lie. What I had left there was sentimental. It just wasn't jewelry. He pulled up the footage from the night I'd stopped by the lobby. Side exit camera? He asked. Yes. He clicked. The timestamp appeared at the bottom. 11:49 p.m. The hallway lights were dimmed to night mode. Empty. Still. 11:52 p.m. Movement. Daniel stepped into frame. Jacket off, sleeves rolled, no briefcase. He didn't look tired. That was the first crack. He looked relieved. He glanced over his shoulder, not nervously, but habitually, like someone who knew where cameras were. Then Olivia appeared, 5 seconds behind him, not holding files, not carrying a laptop, just adjusting her hair, and smiling. They didn't rush. That's what gutted me. If it were reckless, impulsive, maybe I could have convinced myself it was a mistake, but this wasn't rushed. This was routine. He reached for her waist. She leaned in like she belonged there, and he kissed her. Not hungry, not desperate, soft, intimate, familiar. 12 seconds. I counted. The manager shifted in his chair. Want to fast forward? No. I needed to see all 12 seconds, because those 12 seconds were the autopsy. They pulled apart slowly, walked toward the exit badge panel. Daniel scanned his card. Door opened. She followed. Exit logged, 11:53 p.m. 2 badges. Back to back. This wasn't spontaneous. It was planned. I swallowed. Can you rewind? We watched it again. This time I noticed her shoes. Not heels, flats. Comfortable ones. The kind you bring in your bag when you expect to stay late. The kind you change into when the workday is over. The kind you don't wear for investors. I leaned back. Do you have footage from other nights? He hesitated. That's technically confidential. I met his eyes. I'm his wife. That still meant something then. He scrolled back 2 weeks. Same time, same pattern. Daniel exits. Olivia exits. Side door, always side door. 3 nights, 5 nights, 8 nights. This wasn't an affair, it was a schedule. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I thought I would break. Instead, I felt surgical. When betrayal confirms what your nervous system already suspected, the pain is sharp, but it's clean. The real damage happens when they deny it, and I hadn't even confronted him yet. On the drive home, I didn't cry. I replayed the footage in my mind. Frame by frame. His posture, her confidence. The comfort between them. You don't build that in a week. You don't build that in a month. You build that over time, carefully. I waited until he fell asleep that night. His breathing slow, steady. I reached for his phone. Passcode unchanged. Confidence makes men lazy. I didn't search her name. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I searched keywords. Hotel. Travel. Deck. And then I found something better. Archived thread. Muted. Her contact saved under initials. Professional camouflage. But the messages weren't professional. They were layered. Same time tomorrow? Side door? Don't forget to lock the conference room. My pulse slowed. It's strange how clarity feels colder than heartbreak. There were voice notes, too. Short. Time-stamped at 12:14 a.m. I didn't open them. Not yet. There was one message that froze me. Her. Does she suspect? Him. She doesn't see what she doesn't want to. I stared at that sentence until my vision blurred. He wasn't just cheating. He was narrating me. Building a character profile of me. Counting on my loyalty. Using my trust as insulation. The next morning I made breakfast. Normal. Routine. Eggs. Coffee. Toast. He walked in, kissed my forehead. Forehead. That detail hit differently now. How'd you sleep? He asked. Fine, I said. How was the office? He didn't blink. Same. I tilted my head slightly. Busy? Always. He reached for his coffee. Steady hands. No tells. Or maybe I had just missed them before. You ever feel like work is blurring into everything else? I asked lightly. He looked up. What do you mean? Just that you're there so much. He exhaled slowly. It's what I have to do, Claire. You want this lifestyle, right? That line. That subtle shift. It wasn't about his choice anymore. It was about my expectation. Gaslighting doesn't always sound aggressive. Sometimes it sounds reasonable. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I called payroll. I told them I needed a copy of the year-end tax summary. Legitimate reason. While the HR assistant pulled the document, I asked casually, Olivia's been promoted recently, right? Oh, yes, she said brightly. She's basically indispensable now. How so? She handles executive strategy, travel, scheduling, compensation structuring. Compensation structuring? My stomach tightened. That wasn't in her original role. When I reviewed the payroll summary later that evening, something felt off. Her salary had doubled in less than a year. Bonuses quarterly, travel stipends, performance incentives for an assistant. I opened Daniel's laptop that night. He trusted me with it. That was the irony. Confidence. Arrogance. I found internal memos, board notes, meeting minutes. And then I found it. A draft contract. Equity discussion. Olivia's name. Stake percentage. Small, but growing. My chest constricted. This wasn't just intimacy. This was infrastructure. He wasn't just having an affair. He was building her into his future, financially, strategically. I heard his car in the driveway, closed the laptop, sat on the couch, calm. When he walked in, he looked tired, or practiced at looking tired. "How was your day?" he asked. "Productive," I said. He loosened his tie. "I'm going to shower." I watched him walk upstairs, and something inside me shifted. The footage showed the exit. The messages showed coordination. Payroll showed alignment. But the real fracture wasn't the affair. It was the structure. They weren't hiding something impulsive. They were constructing something deliberate. 3 days later, another message came from the anonymous account. One line. "She's going to the conference too." My heart skipped. He had told me she wasn't. He had said clearly, "She doesn't need to attend." I checked the conference website again. Guest list updated. Executive panel speakers. And there it was. Olivia Hayes. Hayes. Not her last name. My last name. It was listed incorrectly. Or intentionally. Either way, it meant something. I stared at the screen. Because if she was traveling with him, if she was sharing space, if this had been happening longer than I thought, then the camera footage was just the surface. And whatever happened during those trips would be worse than 12 silent seconds by a side door. And I knew then, the next 10 minutes of my life were going to change everything. Because I wasn't going to watch another video. I was going to show up. Unannounced. At that conference. And I wasn't prepared for what I'd see there. I didn't tell him I was coming. That part matters. Because if I had told him, he would have prepared. And Daniel was very good at preparing narratives. The conference was in Chicago. 3 days. Corporate leadership summit. Panels, networking dinners, investor breakfasts. He left on a Tuesday morning. Olivia, according to him, was staying back to manage operations. That's what he said while adjusting his cufflinks in the hallway mirror. "She doesn't need to be there," he added casually. "This one's executive level. Executive level." I nodded, smiled, kissed him goodbye, and booked my own flight an hour later. I didn't go there to scream. I didn't go there to expose him publicly. I went because I needed to see what reality looked like when he didn't know I was watching. The hotel was exactly what I expected. Polished marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, conference banners near the elevators. I checked in under my maiden name, not because I was hiding from him, because I was separating from him, psychologically, step by step. The first session ended at 5:30 p.m., cocktail networking at 7 mine. I waited in the lobby lounge, watched executives drift through, lanyards, suits, laughs too loud. At 6:42 p.m., he walked in, and he wasn't alone. She was beside him, not trailing behind, beside, wearing a fitted navy dress that wasn't remotely office. Hair down, hand resting lightly on his forearm, not possessive, familiar. My body didn't react immediately. No shaking, no tears, just observation. He leaned down and whispered something in her ear. She laughed softly. He didn't laugh like that with me anymore. They approached the elevator, and that's when I saw it. 2 key cards. He handed one to her. Same floor. Same room number written on the sleeve. I didn't need to hear the number. I knew. I stood up slowly. Followed at a distance. Elevator doors closed before I reached them. I waited for the next one. Pressed the same floor. When the doors opened, the hallway was empty. Thick carpet, muted lighting. Quiet. Room 1817. Room 1818. Room 1819. And there it was. Room 1820. Door closed. Do not disturb sign hanging. My throat tightened. But not from shock. From confirmation. Because here's the part no one talks about. When you already suspect something, catching it doesn't destroy you. It rearranges you. I didn't knock. Not yet. I walked back to the elevator. Went down to the lobby. Ordered a drink I didn't touch. Waited. At 8:13 p.m., he texted me. Dinner with investors. Might be late. I stared at the timestamp. 8:13. He was upstairs, 15 floors above me, behind a door with a do not disturb sign. I typed back. Proud of you. Kill it. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji. A thumbs up. The same man who once wrote me paragraphs when we were dating. At 9:47 p.m., Olivia posted an Instagram story. Private account, but I could still view it. Mirror selfie. Caption. Big moves. Same room decor behind her. The same headboard I'd just passed. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't even subtle. She was claiming territory, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't just an affair. It was a transition. They weren't sneaking. They were integrating. Around 11:30 p.m., the elevator dinged again. I watched him step out. Alone. Jacket off. Hair slightly messy. He didn't look like a man leaving a networking dinner. He looked relaxed. Content. He didn't notice me at first. I stood up slowly. Daniel. His body froze. He turned. And for a split second, his face emptied. Not guilt. Calculation. Claire? He recovered quickly. What are you doing here? I wanted to surprise you. The lie tasted metallic in my mouth. He scanned the lobby instinctively, checking if anyone important was watching. You should have told me, he said quietly. Why? So I could have made time. Made time. Like I was an appointment. Where's dinner? I asked lightly. He hesitated. Wrapped up early. Investors leave already? Yeah. Funny, I said. I didn't see any in the elevator. His jaw tightened. You're doing that thing again. What thing? Looking for problems. There it was. Gaslighting doesn't scream. It sighs. It suggests you're misaligned. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. You're embarrassing me. Embarrassing him. I glanced toward the elevators. Is Olivia upstairs? His eyes flickered. Of course she is. She's my assistant. Same floor? Silence. Then, you're spiraling. That word. Spiraling. As if I was unstable. As if the footage didn't exist. As if the payroll changes didn't exist. As if room 1820 didn't exist. I held his gaze. Is she in your room? He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned in and whispered, This isn't the place. Which means, yes. We stood there in silence. Marble floors, polished lighting, corporate laughter echoing faintly from the bar, and I realized something important. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing status. There's a difference. Go back upstairs, he said finally. I'll come talk to you later. Later. Like I was an afterthought. I didn't argue. I didn't create a scene. I nodded. Watched him walk back to the elevator. Watched the doors close. And I made a decision. I wasn't confronting him in a hallway. I wasn't begging outside a hotel room. I was going to let him lie. Fully. Completely. Because once someone commits to the lie, publicly, it becomes harder to undo. The next morning, I attended the keynote session. Front row. He stepped onto the stage at 9 hours a.m. Confident. Charismatic. Spoke about integrity. Transparency. Leadership. I almost laughed. And then, I saw her. Third row. Watching him like he hung the sky. When the panel ended, applause filled the room. He stepped down. And that's when he saw me again. In daylight. In public. Smiling. And something shifted in his expression. Not guilt. Not fear. Concern. Because now he understood something. I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was observing strategically. And that scared him more. During the networking break, one of his investors approached me. You must be proud, he said warmly. He's building something extraordinary. I smiled. Yes, I replied. He's very good at building things. And I meant it. Because what I was beginning to understand was this. He hadn't just built a company. He had been building a parallel life. And Olivia wasn't a distraction. She was an asset, a partner, possibly a replacement. And I didn't yet know how deep the alignment between them went. But I was about to. Because that afternoon, during a breakout session, I overheard something that changed the entire game. A conversation about restructuring, about equity, about future leadership alignment. And Olivia's name was mentioned. Not as assistant, as potential executive partner. And in that moment, I realized something devastating. He wasn't cheating recklessly. He was transitioning deliberately, and I wasn't being betrayed impulsively. I was being phased out. And when we got back home, that's when the real confrontation would begin. We flew home on separate flights. That detail sounds small. It wasn't. He told me he needed to stay an extra night for closing meetings. I didn't argue. I had already heard enough at the conference. Leadership alignment, equity transition, long-term strategic stability, and her name woven through those conversations like it belonged there. Not whispered, not hidden, discussed, considered, integrated. The moment you realize your husband is building someone else into the future he once described to you, something inside your chest hardens. It doesn't shatter, it hardens. When he returned home, he moved carefully, too carefully. His tone softened, his movements deliberate. That's another thing no one tells you. When a man senses exposure, he doesn't panic. He recalibrates. About Chicago. He began casually that evening, pouring himself a drink. I didn't look up from the kitchen counter. What about it? You showing up like that? It wasn't necessary. Necessary. I let the word sit. I wanted to see your world. He exhaled slowly. You don't trust me. And there it was. Not I'm sorry, not let's talk, just repositioning. You don't trust me. Trust had become a weapon. I saw you, I said calmly. He froze, but only for a fraction of a second. Saw me where? At the hotel. Silence. Then, you're imagining more than what was there. Gaslighting isn't loud. It's confident. She's my assistant, Claire. We share responsibilities. That's normal. Sharing a room is normal? He blinked. We didn't share a room. Lie, smooth, pre-rehearsed. And I realized something chilling. He wasn't flustered because this wasn't new. He had already imagined this confrontation. Already practiced responses. Why is she being discussed in equity meetings? I asked quietly. That one landed. A subtle shift in his posture. Where did you hear that? Answer the question. He leaned back. You don't understand how scaling works. There it was again. You don't understand. He wasn't denying involvement. He was diminishing my capacity. She's been instrumental, he continued. She deserves compensation. Deserves partnership? Potentially. Potentially. He said it like it was strategic, not intimate. Like it was purely business. And that's when the full picture came together. The late nights, the travel, the bonuses, the payroll anomalies, the footage. He wasn't just sleeping with her. He was elevating her, positioning her, financially tying himself to her. This wasn't an affair. It was succession planning. And I was being phased out. The next week, something else shifted. Employees started acting different around me. Subtle glances, conversations cutting off when I entered the room. One afternoon, I overheard someone whisper, "She's having a hard time with the stress." The stress. That's how it gets framed. Not betrayal. Not deception. Stress. He had started planting seeds. Quietly. Carefully. That I was overwhelmed. Emotional. Struggling. Protecting his narrative. I confronted him again that night. You're telling people I'm unstable. He laughed softly. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From yourself. That sentence will echo in my head forever. From yourself. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. You've been tense. Paranoid. Watching things that aren't there. I stared at him. I saw the cameras. He didn't blink. You misinterpreted. I saw the messages. You're invading privacy. I saw the payroll. That's confidential. Notice the pattern. Every time I presented evidence, he reframed it as my violation, not his. Gaslighting isn't about denying reality. It's about attacking the person who discovered it. Then came the second phone. I found it in his car, hidden under the driver's seat. Not well hidden, just confident hidden. Prepaid. Minimal contacts. Her number. Under a fake name. But the messages weren't subtle. They were logistical. Same time? Side entrance. Board update went well. Board update. So she was in those meetings. Not as assistant. As presence. As participant. I felt the shift fully then. This wasn't passion. It was alliance. And alliances are more dangerous than affairs. Because they're strategic. I placed the phone back exactly where I found it. Didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I requested a copy of the updated shareholder structure. Legally. As his spouse. What I saw confirmed everything. A restructuring proposal. Gradual dilution of his own majority share. And in that dilution, her. Slowly gaining. Small percentages. Quarter by quarter. He wasn't just cheating. He was tying his financial future to her, which meant one thing. He believed I was temporary. And she was permanent. When I confronted him with the restructuring document, he didn't deny it. He reframed it. You're thinking emotionally. I'm thinking strategically. Strategically. He walked past me. Poured another drink. You don't get how business works. There it was again. Not betrayal. Business. He had weaponized ambition. And here's what hurt most. He looked at her like she was part of his future, and he looked at me like I was an obstacle to manage. Not a partner. An obstacle. That's when isolation began. He stopped coming home some nights. Stopped explaining. Stopped pretending. But publicly, he remained composed. Investor dinners. Company events. Photos with Olivia positioned carefully. Professional distance. Personal closeness. I watched it unfold like a slow corporate takeover. And then something happened I hadn't anticipated. An investor called me directly. Private. Confidential. There's concern, he said carefully, about conflict of interest. Conflict of interest. Meaning someone else had noticed. Meaning it wasn't just in my head. Meaning the structure wasn't airtight. And if investors were starting to question, then his empire wasn't as secure as he thought. But what I didn't know yet was how far he was willing to go to protect it. Because protecting a company is one thing. Protecting an affair embedded inside the company, that's different. And when the board meeting was scheduled 2 weeks later, that's when the real collapse began. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m. I wasn't technically required to attend. I wasn't an executive. I wasn't an employee. I was the wife, which, in rooms like that, means decorative, until you become inconvenient. Daniel assumed I wouldn't show up. That was his first mistake. I wore navy, structured, controlled, not dramatic, no trembling, no mascara running, no hysteria. That was important. Because women are dismissed the second they look emotional in corporate spaces. When I walked into the conference room, conversations paused. Not loudly. Just enough. Daniel looked up from the head of the table. There it was again. That flicker. Calculation. Claire, he said evenly. Didn't know you were coming. I know, I replied. I took a seat at the far end. Not beside him. Not across from him. Neutral territory. Olivia was already there. Laptop open. Notes prepared. Professional posture. Her expression didn't change when she saw me. That's what chilled me. No panic. No guilt. Just a brief assessment. Like I was a variable to account for. The meeting began. Revenue projections, expansion models, cost restructuring. Then it shifted. Let's discuss leadership alignment, one of the investors said. There it was. The phrase I'd heard in Chicago. Daniel cleared his throat. As we scale, it's critical to reinforce internal loyalty and operational efficiency. Internal loyalty. Interesting word choice. He continued. Olivia has been instrumental in navigating our growth trajectory. I'm proposing a formalized partnership track. Partnership track. The room stayed neutral. Investors don't react emotionally. They assess risk. What percentage? Someone asked. Incremental equity. Performance-based. Performance-based. My pulse stayed steady. Then one of the older investors leaned forward. And the optics? Optics. That's what this was about now. Not morality. Optics. Daniel didn't hesitate. Fully professional. Fully professional. Olivia nodded slightly. Affirming. Aligned. And that's when I spoke. Is it fully professional? Silence. All eyes turned. Daniel's jaw tightened. Claire, this isn't the time. It's exactly the time. The room shifted. Investors leaned back. This was no longer just business. This was liability. Is the side entrance professional? I asked calmly. Daniel's gaze sharpened. Excuse me? The security footage from 11:52 p.m. last month. Is that standard executive protocol? The temperature dropped. No one spoke. One investor glanced at Daniel. Olivia remained composed, but her hands stilled. You're mischaracterizing... Daniel began. I have copies, I said evenly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shake. That disarmed him more than anger ever could. You invaded company privacy? He snapped. Notice the pivot. Not denial. Attack. I reviewed public building footage as your spouse. I corrected. Claire. He warned quietly. You're embarrassing yourself. There it was again. Embarrassing. As if protecting the truth was the offense. One investor cleared his throat. Daniel. Is there something we should be aware of? He leaned back in his chair. Controlled. Measured. There is no conflict of interest. Claire has been under stress recently and is drawing conclusions. Under stress. Drawing conclusions. He had already seeded that narrative. I turned to the investors. Ask about payroll adjustments. Daniel's eyes flashed. Enough. Ask about travel stipends, I continued. Ask why executive assistant compensation doubled without board discussion. Olivia finally spoke. My compensation reflects expanded responsibilities. Her voice was steady. She had rehearsed this. Daniel interjected smoothly. This is a personal issue being projected into a corporate environment. That line was crafted. He wasn't denying the relationship. He was reframing it as irrelevant. That's how powerful men survive scandals. They separate morality from business. But investors don't separate risk from reputation. One of them looked at Daniel carefully. Is there a relationship beyond professional capacity? Direct. Sharp. Daniel didn't answer immediately. And that hesitation was louder than confession. Olivia spoke before he did. My private life is not relevant to company performance. Private life. Interesting. She didn't deny. She redirected. The room shifted again, because now it wasn't about me. It wasn't about marriage. It was about exposure. Daniel leaned forward. There has been no misconduct. That was the first official denial. No misconduct. Technically vague, legally cautious. I stood slowly. I didn't come here to destroy your company, I said calmly. I came because if you're restructuring equity around a relationship you're hiding, that's not leadership. That's liability. No one spoke. And for the first time, I saw something crack in Daniel's expression. Not guilt, fear, not of losing me, of losing control. The meeting ended abruptly. Investors requested private discussion. Daniel didn't look at me as I walked out. Olivia did. Her expression wasn't triumphant. It wasn't ashamed. It was calculating. Like she was measuring whether this setback was temporary. In the hallway, Daniel caught up to me. What the hell was that? He hissed. The truth. You just jeopardized everything. No, I replied quietly. You did. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. You think this makes you powerful? It makes me informed. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Because up until now I had been predictable, supportive, loyal, silent. And silent wives are easy to manage. Informed wives are not. You don't understand the consequences, he said coldly. I understand them perfectly. And I did. Because the real collapse hadn't even begun yet. Board investigations take time. Reputations erode slowly. But what I didn't anticipate was what he would do next to protect himself. Because when a man realizes he's losing narrative control, he doesn't retreat. He escalates. And what happened the following week proved one thing. This was never just about love. It was about power. And I had just stepped into the center of it. The first thing that changed wasn't his behavior. It was the silence. The board didn't call him immediately. They didn't accuse him. They didn't remove him. They requested documentation, which, in corporate language, means, we're watching you. Daniel came home that night later than usual. Not because he was busy, because he was recalibrating. He didn't slam doors. He didn't yell. He sat at the kitchen island with his laptop open, jaw tight, fingers moving faster than necessary. Damage control? I asked calmly. He didn't look up. You're enjoying this. That accusation surprised me. Enjoying what? Undermining me. Undermining. Interesting word. I didn't undermine you, I said quietly. I exposed you. He shut the laptop harder than needed. You think this ends with me? He asked. That wasn't a question. That was a warning. The next morning, I received 3 messages. Not from him. From mutual acquaintances. He seems really overwhelmed. Is everything okay at home? He's going through a lot. The narrative was shifting. Not Daniel had an inappropriate relationship, but Daniel is under pressure. And somehow, I was part of the pressure. By noon, an article appeared in a minor business blog. Nothing explicit, but subtle. Internal restructuring sparks leadership tension. Leadership tension. Not ethical breach, not misconduct. Tension. Language is power, and Daniel was fluent in it. That evening, he approached me differently. Calmer, controlled. We need to be strategic about this, he said. Strategic. He had moved past denial. Now he was negotiating. With what? I asked. With optics. There it is again. He exhaled slowly. If you push this publicly, you hurt yourself too. Do I? Yes. He leaned in. You were aware of long hours, travel, expansion. If this turns into a public dispute, it becomes messy. For both of us. Translation. Mutually assured destruction. He wasn't protecting the marriage. He was protecting his image. And if necessary, he would drag me into the mud with him. 2 days later, Olivia updated her LinkedIn. Title change. Executive Operations Director, not assistant. Director. Subtle, but deliberate. The restructuring hadn't been finalized, yet the title had. That meant confidence. That meant someone believed this would stabilize. I stared at her profile photo. Polished, professional, composed. She didn't look like someone afraid of fallout. She looked like someone waiting for transition. And then came the call. One of the investors. Direct. Private. There's concern about perception, he said carefully. Perception again. It's not the relationship alone, he continued. It's the concentration of decision-making. Translation. If he collapses, the company collapses. I asked the question directly. Are you removing him? Pause. We're evaluating governance. Governance. That's corporate language for, we don't trust him fully anymore. When Daniel found out about that call, he stopped pretending. He walked into the living room, phone in hand. They're spooked, he said flatly. Because of the affair? I asked. Because of instability. He looked at me when he said it. Not at himself. At me. You mean accountability, I corrected. You mean obsession, he snapped. There it was. Escalation. You're destroying years of work because you're jealous. Jealous. I almost laughed. Jealous of what? The side door? The hotel room? The equity allocation? He didn't answer. He walked upstairs instead. And for the first time in years, I slept peacefully. Because the illusion was gone. The next board session happened without me. Closed door. Private. Daniel didn't tell me what was discussed, but I saw the change immediately. His name was removed from the public-facing leadership bio. Temporary update, they claimed. Temporary. Olivia's name remained. Prominent. Featured. This wasn't collapse yet. This was containment. And that's when it hit me fully. He hadn't built her as a secret. He had built her as continuity. If he fell, she stayed. If he was forced out, she carried forward. She wasn't the side piece. She was the succession plan. And I was the liability. That realization didn't break me. It clarified everything. That night, he finally said it. I think we need space. Space. Not apology. Not confession. Space. You mean separation? I replied evenly. He didn't deny it. I can't operate under scrutiny like this. Under scrutiny. He meant under consequence. I stood, walked toward the window, City lights blinking below. When did it start? I asked quietly. Silence. Then, it's not about start dates. Which means it started earlier than I thought. He continued. It evolved. Evolved. Like a business model. Like market positioning. Like growth strategy. I turned toward him. And when did you decide I wasn't part of the future? That question landed. He didn't have language for that one. Because that's the truth no one wants to say aloud. He didn't wake up one day and cheat. He gradually transferred emotional investment, attention, ambition, trust, and by the time I saw the camera footage, the transition was already advanced. 3 days later, he moved into a condo downtown. Not dramatic, not explosive, efficient. He packed lightly, laptop, clothes, documents. When he walked out the door, he didn't look devastated. He looked focused, like he was managing another phase of expansion. Olivia didn't move in immediately. That would have been too obvious. But within weeks, her car was parked outside regularly. The board eventually limited his executive authority. Not removed, restricted. He retained partial ownership. But oversight increased, control diluted. He had protected the company, but not the illusion. And that's what collapse looks like in real life. Not screaming headlines, not public scandal. Slow erosion, measured distancing, calculated repositioning. The company survived. He survived. She survived. But the marriage? That didn't collapse in the boardroom. It collapsed the moment I realized something simple. He wasn't working late. He was building forward. Without me. And once you see that clearly, you don't beg to be re-included. You walk away. People always ask the wrong question. They ask, was it worth it? They mean the affair, the company, the risk, the scandal. But that's not the real question. The real question is, when did I stop being part of his future? Because affairs don't start with hotel rooms. They start with reallocation. Attention first, then time, then trust, then vision. And by the time I saw the security footage at 11:52 p.m., he had already shifted his investment. Emotionally, strategically, financially. He wasn't staying late because he was ambitious. He was staying late because he was transferring intimacy into infrastructure. That's what no one warns you about. Sometimes the other woman isn't chaos. She's alignment. She's positioned, integrated. She's sitting in board meetings before you even realize you've been removed from the table. And here's the part I didn't understand at first. It wasn't just about her. It was about control. He believed he could manage both narratives. Public stability, private transition, keep the company intact, replace the wife quietly, minimize fallout. What he didn't calculate was this. Silence only works if the other person stays silent. And I didn't. Not loudly, not destructively, just strategically. The company survived. He remains partially involved. She remains positioned. But something fundamental shifted. Not in him. In me. I stopped confusing ambition with integrity. I stopped mistaking long hours for loyalty. I stopped believing that proximity equals partnership. Because here's what I learned. If a man starts building a life that requires your ignorance to function, you're already being replaced, not necessarily emotionally first, structurally, gradually, efficiently. And that kind of betrayal doesn't scream. It reorganizes. The security footage didn't break my marriage. It exposed its timeline. The messages didn't destroy my trust. They revealed its expiration date. And the boardroom didn't end his empire. It revealed its vulnerability. But the most important collapse wasn't his. It was mine. The version of me who believed I needed to be patient, understanding, supportive, while my role quietly diminished. That version of me dissolved, and what replaced her was something quieter, stronger, not reactive, informed. I didn't walk away because he loved her. I walked away because he built her into permanence. There's a difference. Affairs can be impulsive. Succession planning isn't. When I think back to that night in the security room, Watching them exit through the side door, I don't feel rage anymore. I feel clarity, because that door wasn't just an exit from the building. It was an exit from the illusion. He wasn't working late. He was phasing me out. And once you see that clearly, you don't fight for the board seat. You build your own table. And that was the moment I understood something that took me years to articulate. He didn't betray me because he loved her more. He betrayed me because he valued control more than connection. And once control becomes the priority, love becomes replaceable. That's the real collapse. Not the company, not the marriage. The illusion that you were indispensable. You never are. Not to someone building strategically. And that's not tragedy. That's information. And information is power.